Welcome. We hope to provide an overview of the college process for students with an IEP and 504 plans as they transition to college. We recognize that aspects of this process can be overwhelming for all students, and for students who have learning disabilities or physical challenges, this may be especially true. Hopefully, we can clarify some of the details for you throughout this presentation, but also know that you have an individual support team available to you along the way in your child's school counselor and case manager. The goal of this specific presentation is to provide information on college planning. We also acknowledge that students explore a wide range of post-secondary plans that might include gap year, employment, military, technical or trade school, or an apprenticeship. Your child's school counselor is here to support them in any of those goals as well. These are some of the agenda items that will be covered throughout this presentation. When we refer to colleges, it includes both colleges and universities. Also, when we use the word disability, it is not meant to be stigmatizing, but rather because it mirrors language you will see on college websites, such as learning disability services or support programs. This chart provides some helpful information about the differences between an IEP and 504 plan. The related law will be covered in the following slides, but important terminology to note is that an IEP is covered through the Federal Special Education Law of the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and a 504 plan is covered through Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is a civil rights law. An Individualized Education Plan, or IEP, provides individualized special education related services to eligible students. The plan details a student's special education program. To be eligible, students must have one or more of the 13 disabilities specified in IDEA, and the disability must create a need for specialized instruction. Public school children are covered until high school graduation or 21 years of age. A 504 plan provides supports and accommodations within the learning environment to students who have a disability that substantially limits one or more basic life activities. The plan details how the schools support an eligible student. Protections under Section 504 extend beyond high school.
The law at the high school level. Section 504 and the ADA, which apply to post-secondary education, are very different from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, which covers grades K through 12. This means that some adjustment of the perspective of students, parents, and instructors is necessary when making the transition from high school to college. We hope that providing you with this information and knowing the differences will help the student prepare for their future. IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, protects the rights of students with disabilities by ensuring that everyone receives a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, regardless of the abilities. IDEA requires K through 8 districts to provide specialized services and instruction to students who qualify. ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, protects students from being discriminated against in the K through 12 setting due to recognized or perceived disability. For example, in high school, students with an IEP have annual meetings scheduled by the school to review the student's progress and plan. In college, the student will need to take initiative, communicate, and advocate with their professors and the college's support service department regarding what they need. So at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut, if you're approved for accommodations to have a test read aloud with extended time and in a quiet environment, the student would need to submit a request to schedule the appropriate college personnel in advance. Continuing the law at the high school level, K through 12 students with disabilities are covered by one of the two laws. Under IDEA, Individualized Education Plans, or IEPs, are developed for the students with learning disabilities. Under ADA, students with some types of disabilities, health issues, and physical impairments typically receive 504 plans. Looking at the law as it applies to college, students with learning disabilities, chronic medical conditions, and physical impairments are protected under ADA. Colleges are not subject to IDEA. IEPs and 504 plans do not automatically carry over. The law provides less stringent requirements for colleges than it does the high school. If a student qualifies for services at the college level, the college will develop a new plan. As you explore college options, we encourage you to gather information regarding each college's eligibility process, accommodations, and services available. It can be unsettling for some students and families when they initially start to learn about some of these differences, both in the law and what is required of colleges. As we progress through this presentation, we hope you will walk away feeling empowered, understanding that the rights of the students are and what you can expect. We want you to know what information to explore and what questions to ask. It's easy to become overwhelmed by change, but in essence, there are a great many colleges that provide wonderfully supportive programs to students. Finding the overall appropriate fit for you is the focus of this process. In addition, students are encouraged to also seek supports at the college that may be available to all students, such as meeting with a professor during their office hours, attending a math lab or a writing lab, or joining a study group. For example, if a student finds the library at college too distracting, they might find an empty classroom uh, to study in and turn off his cell phone for a period of time, allowing himself only to check it briefly for every 30 or 60 minutes. To be successful, discipline, resourcefulness, resiliency, and making academic responsibility a priority apply to all students. In this presentation, we'll offer contrast regarding what colleges may or may not provide, especially compared to your high school experience. How ADA works in college. Presence of a disability does not guarantee services. Colleges are not responsible for identifying students with disabilities. Responsibility is on the student to self-identify. ADA only requires colleges to provide students with access to programs, and colleges are not required to provide specialized education or enough accommodations to make students as successful as their peers. In essence, this means that colleges are not requiring to level the playing field for a student with disabilities. Again, this does not mean that students can't receive support for their disabilities. It does mean that if student needs support in college, this is a feature which will factor into their college search process. At the right college, students with a variety of strengths and needs can be accommodated. It's about finding a good fit. Another resource is a website which lists some colleges that allow you to apply without an ACT or SAT score. This website is called www.fairtest.org.
On this slide, you'll see the three broad categories of the types of college programs provided for students with learning disabilities support. Within each of these categories, there is a spectrum and range of services and supports provided. Note that physical disability is a protected class under ADA, and schools must address limitations related to those needs. These types of programs include the most structured programs, which are the most comprehensive services, coordinated services, which are less comprehensive, and just simply services, which are the least comprehensive and which are pretty much provided by every college. One of my students who needed a sign language interpreter explored several colleges. As he explored schools, including looking at size, location, majors, tuition, and costs, he also asked how the school handled providing sign language interpreters. One school responded that they would figure it out when he arrived. This was unsettling for him, so he ended up picking a school that was able to describe a more detailed plan, a list of interpreters, and helpful resources. As I mentioned, structured programs provide the most comprehensive services. The staff is certified in learning disabilities and special services. Staff and students are involved in structured plans to meet specific learning needs. A contract detailing student participation and responsibilities may be required. Development of specific skills and remedial courses are required. A separate application to the program may be required. There may be additional fees for services, and this is most appropriate for students who required significant modifications or accommodations during high school. As you consider these supportive programs, consider your child's current services and supports to help you determine if this is an appropriate fit. Landmark College in Vermont and Beacon in Florida are examples of two very specialized schools that only accept students with IEPs. As you explore colleges, we encourage you to seek further information from their website regarding their support services. By contrast, coordinated services are less comprehensive than in structured programs. Specific skills courses or remedial courses may be available to students. Common accommodations are generally available, and this is appropriate for students who have received some modifications and accommodations in high school, mostly on an as-needed basis. Finally, services are the least comprehensive category of programming available. Colleges will comply with federal mandates to provide reasonable accommodations to all students who are found eligible. It's most appropriate for students who require minimum accommodations in high school, but would feel comfortable in knowing that those accommodations are available to them. This is truly the catch-all type of category, as colleges are truly required to provide some services to students with disabilities. Students applying to programs like these will need to advocate for themselves perhaps more strongly than the other types of programs. This slide provides a list of examples of colleges with different types of programs. This list is for illustrative purposes only, and it is subject to change and is not an exhaustive list or an endorsement of any particular program. The list on the left provides structured programs, while the list on the right provides programs with coordinated services.
The college search process for all students begins with a self-assessment. A student's need for support of a disability is just one component in identifying schools that are an overall good fit for the student. So it's really important that the student evaluate their academic, social, medical, or emotional needs. It can help if the student is able to explain the disability or the medical condition in plain language, understand its impact on learning in other areas, describe the accommodations that have been helpful or necessary in the past, as well as what accommodations or supports the student is currently utilizing that are helping them to be successful. So, as the college search process gets underway, it's really important that the student understand their current needs so that they can begin to identify schools that can meet the level of support that they are looking for. We know that students with a clear understanding of their needs are more likely to choose colleges with the appropriate support. It's also important that students and families understand the different levels of support programs that are available and identify which is appropriate in terms of structured, coordinated, or services. Your counselor and your child's case manager will collaborate with the student and the family on this decision and these conversations. And it also helps if you can visit and research a bunch of different programs. It will illustrate that not all programs are created equal and that there may be support programs that are a good fit for your student, but that school is overall not a good fit. So there are lots of different components that go into being a good fit, and that disability support program or those services are just one component of that process. Some other tips that are helpful when thinking about program selection would be to meet with representatives from the Office of Disability Support Services or arrange a call with them to ask questions. How many staff members are there? What is their training in? In the structured programs, you would expect that staff of the Disability Support Office are most often trained specifically in special services, in providing disability support for students with learning differences. You could ask, what are the main roles of the Office of Disability Support staff? What types of accommodations are typically provided? Are there any fees associated with utilizing these services? How many students receive services through this office? As well as, do they provide any information about the graduation rate and the retention rate for students who are served by the Office of Disability Support Service? This is actually a really important indicator of how satisfied students are with the overall school, but as well as how well their learning needs are being met through the Office of Disability Support. It's also helpful to examine the general academic support services at the College of Interest, such as writing centers, general tutoring services, study skill services. That may give you a pretty good sense of the overall climate of support available at that school. And it's just really important to remember that services in general really vary among colleges, and there will be lots of different settings and formats of support services to serve really a wide range of student needs. So it's really about identifying what are the most important things that your student needs in terms of support, and then what schools can provide the correct level to match that, as well as the schools that overall are a good match for your student based on what they're looking for in a college.
Now I'm going to discuss the application process for schools with disability support programs. The process can vary from each college. Students can check each school's website for specific information related to their application policies. They can also reach out to their school counselor or case manager for assistance when applying, which will occur during their senior year. Students will submit a regular application to the college, and in some cases, a separate application to the Learning Support Program. Marist College is a great example of a school that has a separate application for their program. Deadlines will vary based on the school and type of program. Now let's talk about standardized testing. Standardized testing is a piece to the application process. I also want to mention that there are schools that are test optional as well. There is more information on the counseling website related to testing, but I do want to focus on accommodations for today. The decision about accommodations on standardized testing is solely at the discretion of the College Board and ACT. The College Board administers the SAT, PSAT, and AP exams. Counselors and case managers will assist students who wish to apply for accommodations. If you're supported by an IEP, contact your case manager for more information about the process. If you are supported by a 504 plan, please contact your school counselor for more information about the process. Students are encouraged to visit the College Board and ACT websites for specific testing information and registration deadlines. There are continuous updates to the test optional list as well. And for a complete list of test optional schools, you may also visit fairtest.org. In this part of the presentation, we are going to discuss the disclosure of a learning disability. Students can decide whether or not they want to disclose their disability during any part of the admissions process. Students who are applying to a structured program will likely disclose their disability during the application process. Either way, students should discuss this topic with their school counselor and/or case manager during this college application process. Students with a learning disability are held to the same admission standards as any other student. Much like colleges will not be modifying their curriculum, they also won't be modifying their admissions requirements in general. Typically, disclosing a disability neither helps nor hurts students. The only time that it could hurt a student is if the college knows that they cannot accommodate a student because they would need to modify their program. For instance, if a student requires significant learning supports during their senior year of high school and applies to a school that lacks a robust learning support program, and that student discloses their disability during the application process, they may be denied by the school because the support services required are greater than what the school can provide. It may be tempting to argue that the student should have never disclosed their disability, and many don't at the time of admissions, which is fine. But the problem in this example is not that the student disclosed their disability, it is that they selected a school that did not match their learning needs and would not be setting them up for success. Whether or not a student discloses their disability at the time of application is a personal choice. However, as long as the student's needs matches the type of support that the school can offer, the student does not need to be afraid about disclosing their disability.
Now I want to talk about how to make your college aware that you need services and what is required in the form of documentation. First, students must identify themselves to the appropriate office, and this is a step that is taken once the student is admitted to the college, not before. Please note that the responsibility to initiate this process falls solely on the student, so it is crucial that students are aware that they must take this step in order to receive services from the college. Next, students must provide the required documentation to the appropriate office at the college. This is done after graduating high school. When you graduate, you can obtain a copy of your IEP and testing or 504 plan to provide to the college. Because this is such a student-driven process, we recommend that students begin working on those self-advocacy skills now and that they practice communicating their needs to their teachers so they feel more comfortable with this in college. Colleges will require documentation and proof of disability, but what is required varies by college and by disability. Examples of types of documentation include a 504 plan, medical documentation, or an IEP plan. Updated testing through an IEP plan may also be required, and this testing usually occurs in the junior year of high school. All requirements can be found on the Disability Services website of each particular school, so it is important that you familiarize yourself with what is required so you can provide the appropriate information. The law allows each college to determine documentation and eligibility requirements for receiving services. If you have any questions regarding specific requirements, it is best to check with the college's Office of Disability Services for the appropriate feedback.
Accommodations may vary from school to school and also professor to professor. If a student is found eligible, some accommodations may include the following: extended time, which is generally 50% for in-class tests, access to audiobooks, access to texts in alternate formats, tutoring, note-taking, and different testing environments. Accommodations that are not typically available at the college level would be things like study guides, 100% extended time or more for exams, alternate test formats, extended time to complete papers and assignments, and colleges also do not have to waive curriculum requirements. In terms of accessing services, once students are approved, it's often their responsibility to notify their professors. At the college level, they focus on encouraging self-advocacy, independent learning, developing strategies, and the use of assistive technologies. Colleges may not offer some of the accommodations that students have become used to while they were in high school. Support is available to students to help them develop strategies to account for these differences in accommodations. It's important for the students to communicate with the office at the college level to set up services in advance.
And so, what are the next steps in the process? It begins with a student's self-assessment of their needs and what accommodations they are currently utilizing to be successful. They also want to research the schools that will be a good fit for them beyond simply academic accommodations. They will want to use a variety of resources, including both their school counselor and case manager, And then specifically, the K&W Guide to Colleges for Students with Learning Differences is an external resource that is very valuable in this process for students with learning needs. They will then move through the college visit process, whether virtual or in person, using various resources that colleges are providing online and on their campuses. And they should develop a list of questions, keeping notes to highlight both the pros and cons of different colleges and their programs as they research and explore further. Keep in mind that your school counselor and case manager is here to support the student every step of the way and can answer specific questions that are unique to the student and what their needs may be and their college goals. In closing, the college search process is about the best fit, and disability support is simply one component of that fit. Even at the colleges with highly structured programs, students are still, first and foremost, a student of that college, not of their disability support program. And so while the student is the person best able to determine what level of support is needed and what type of program will suit them best, they should also use their school counselor and case manager to guide them through this process while they reach out to specific colleges to learn more about their programs and the type of disability support available to them. We thank you for attending this presentation, and if you or your student have any additional questions, we encourage them to email your school counselor or case manager directly for individualized support. And please take the time to review the references we've provided here at the end that we hope will be helpful to you as you and your student embark on this aspect of the college search process.